Everything really did change for the 49ers in the span of one weekend. And I don't think that's being dramatic at all. One loss flipped the entire outlook of this season from cruising toward a favorable playoff run to staring down one of the toughest paths imaginable. Losing the division, losing the #1 seed, and losing control of their own destiny all at once forces us to completely recalibrate expectations. And if you're feeling frustrated or even a little uneasy right now, trust me, you're not alone. This is one of those moments as a fan where you sit back and say, okay, now what does this team really have left in the tank? Coming into that Seahawks game, the conversation around this team was all about dominance, home field advantage, rest, matchups breaking the right way, and the idea that San Francisco was built to make a deep run. Then the game actually happened, and instead of answers, it raised more questions than we've had all season. Not just because they lost, but because of how it looked. Flat, out of rhythm, and honestly, a step behind in areas where this team usually thrives. That's why this loss feels heavier than a typical regular season stumble. It didn't just hurt in the standings, it reshaped the entire playoff picture. Now the margin for error is gone. There's no safety net anymore. Every snap from here on out feels magnified, every injury feels more costly, and every matchup feels more dangerous. Instead of letting teams come through Levi's Stadium, the 49ers are now walking into hostile territory against an opponent that already matches up well with their biggest strengths. That alone changes how we should be viewing this team heading into the postseason. It doesn't mean the season is over, but it does mean the road just got a whole lot steeper. And that's really what this video is about. Not panic, not blind optimism, but an honest look at where the 49ers are right now. What went wrong? What still works? And what absolutely has to change if this team wants to survive longer than one playoff weekend? We're going to break it all down piece by piece, because there are real warning signs here that can't be ignored anymore. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Be honest in the comments. Did this loss change how confident you feel about the 49ers in the playoffs? Yes or no? And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time to do it. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and if you want clear, straight-up Niners coverage through this playoff run, make sure you're locked in and notifications are on. Coming up next, let's get into why the Seahawks game exposed some real problems that other teams are absolutely going to try to copy. The Seahawks game didn't just end a streak or cost the 49ers a seed. It exposed problems that have been hiding in plain sight. And once you see them, it's hard to unsee them. This wasn't one of those games where you can shrug and say, the ball didn't bounce your way. The numbers tell a story that's actually more concerning than the final score. 9 first downs. That's it. When your offense only moves the chains 9 times in an entire game, you're basically asking your defense to play perfect football, and that's just not sustainable, especially against playoff-caliber teams. Then you look at third down. 2 for 9. That alone explains why the offense never found a rhythm, and why it felt like the 49ers were constantly on the sideline. And that leads to what might be the most alarming stat of the entire night: total plays. Seattle ran 67 plays. The 49ers ran just 42. That's a 25-play difference, and in the NFL, that's massive. It tells you Seattle controlled the tempo, controlled possession, and dictated how the game was played from start to finish. What makes this even more frustrating is that the defense technically did its job in terms of points allowed. Holding a division rival to 13 points in your own building should be enough to win almost every time. That's why this loss stings so much. The offense simply could not stay on the field. There was one really solid drive, And even that ended in a red zone interception that completely killed momentum. It wasn't reckless, it wasn't forced, but it was another example of how thin the margin was all night. Credit where it's due, Seattle came in with a plan and executed it perfectly. They took away the rhythm throws, they challenged the offensive line, and they forced the 49ers to play left-handed. But at the same time, this wasn't just about Seattle playing well. This was about San Francisco getting out-schemed and out-physicaled in areas where they usually dominate. That's the part that should worry you the most, moving forward. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Once a team puts something like this on film, the rest of the league pays attention. Defensive coordinators are going to study how Seattle slowed this offense down, how they shortened the game, and how they forced the 49ers into uncomfortable situations. That's why this wasn't just a bad night. It felt like a blueprint, and that's dangerous this time of year. I want to know what stood out to you the most from this game. Was it the third down struggles, the lack of explosive plays, or just the overall inability to control the game? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're getting value from these breakdowns, help the channel out by liking the video and subscribing. We're closing in on 1,000 Howlers, subscribers, and every single one of you makes a difference. Up next, we need to talk about the injuries, because they're stacking up fast and they're hitting the 49ers in the worst possible spots. As concerning as the performance was, the injury situation is what really takes this from frustrating to borderline alarming. This is where the conversation shifts from what went wrong to how much this team can realistically handle. It's not just that guys are banged up, it's where those injuries are happening and how thin the depth has become at the worst possible time. And it starts up front, because the absence of Trent Williams completely changed the offense. Even if the replacement played a respectable game, not having Trent out there matters. That's a future Hall of Famer. His presence alone changes how defenses have to line up, how protections are called, and how comfortable the quarterback feels. Without him, the offense looked more predictable and far easier to disrupt. That's not a coincidence. This team is built around winning at the line of scrimmage, and when one of your foundational pieces is missing, the ripple effect shows up everywhere. Then there's the situation with Ricky Pearsall. Re-aggravating the PCL injury is brutal, because availability has been the biggest issue for him. When he's on the field, he brings an element this offense needs. But not having him again just shrinks the margin even more. You never know how much one receiver changes a game, but you do know that being short-handed limits what you can call and how aggressive you can be. Hopefully he can get back for the wild card round, but right now, that uncertainty is part of the problem. The biggest blow, though, is losing Tatum Bethune for the season. That injury officially pushes the linebacker room into crisis mode. Think about this for a second. Every linebacker from the original 53-man roster is injured. Fred Warner on IR, D. Winters hurt, Nick Martin on IR, Luke Gifford injured, and now Bethune is done for the year. That's not bad luck anymore, that's a full-blown survival situation. This is where Eric Kendricks enters the picture, and whether you feel optimistic or nervous about that probably depends on how you view experience versus athleticism. He's a veteran. He's seen moments like this. He understands how to communicate, how to get guys lined up, and how to handle pressure. That matters. But at the same time, asking a mid-season practice squad addition to step in as your starting middle linebacker in a playoff game is a massive ask. This defense has lived on the next man up mentality all season, but you can feel it starting to stretch thin. There are only so many replacements you can cycle through before it affects consistency and execution. I'm curious where you land on this. Do you think the defense can survive with this linebacker group? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because with injuries changing daily, we're going to keep you updated every step of the way. Coming up next, we have to talk about why the Eagles matchup makes all of this even more dangerous. When you start looking ahead to the Eagles matchup, that's where everything we've talked about so far starts to collide at the worst possible time. What Seattle did in that game should worry you not just because it happened, but because Philadelphia is built to do the same thing, and in some ways, do it even better. The Seahawks dominated the line of scrimmage, and that's the one area where the 49ers absolutely cannot afford to lose control. Unfortunately, that's exactly where the Eagles want to live. The run defense is the first red flag. Seattle didn't need to overwhelm the 49ers with volume. They hurt them with chunk plays. Multiple runs of 20 yards or more, backs getting into the second level far too easily, and drives that stayed alive simply by leaning on the ground game. Now think about what that means when the opponent is Philadelphia. This isn't a finesse rushing attack. This is a downhill physical run game built to wear you out, snap after snap. Saquon Barkley is the type of back who turns small creases into explosive gains, and we've already seen how dangerous that can be against this defense. It's not just about stopping the run either. It's about what happens when you can't. When the Eagles control the ground game, they control the clock. When they control the clock, your offense sits. And when your offense is already struggling to find rhythm, that becomes a huge problem. That's exactly how Seattle shortened the game and kept the 49ers uncomfortable all night. The scary part is that Philadelphia has the personnel and the mindset to follow that same script. Then there's the trenches as a whole. On both sides of the ball, the Seahawks won up front, and that's why they won the game. Chase Sr. said it best when he pointed out that San Francisco was exposed at the line of scrimmage, and it's hard to argue with that. If the Eagles are able to dominate there too, this turns into a long afternoon very quickly. This matchup is less about trick plays or coaching wrinkles, and more about who can impose their will physically. So I want to hear from you here. Do you think the 49ers can win this game in the trenches against the Eagles? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're locked in for this playoff run, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're getting closer to 1,000 food crew subscribers, and your support keeps this coverage going. Coming up next, we'll talk about whether there's still real hope for this team and why the season might not be over just yet. With everything stacked against them, it's fair to ask whether there's still a realistic path forward for this team, or if the Seahawks game was the moment that told us the run is about to end. The truth probably sits somewhere in the middle. The road is undeniably harder now, but it isn't completely closed off. There is still a version of this season where the 49ers survive long enough to change the narrative again. And that's what makes this situation so complicated. The biggest reason hope isn't gone is the possibility of getting reinforcements back. Fred Warner has reportedly been telling teammates that he's targeting a return later in the playoffs. Even if that timeline stretches out further than fans would like, just the idea that your best defensive player could re-enter the picture changes how. You look at the big picture. If the 49ers can find a way to win one, maybe two playoff games, suddenly the defense looks very different than it does right now. That's obviously easier said than done, especially with the way injuries have piled up and the way the team looked against Seattle. There's no pretending this is an ideal situation. It's not. The margin is razor thin, and there's no room for another performance like the one we just saw. But this roster still has experience, still has leadership, and still has players who have been in deep playoff runs before. That matters in moments like this. It feels like the light is still there at the end of the tunnel, but getting to it is going to take a lot more effort than anyone expected a week ago. One misstep, one bad quarter, and it could all be over. But if they can stabilize at the line of scrimmage, protect the football, and get just enough help health-wise, this team isn't out of the fight yet. I want to know where you stand. As we head into the wild card round, how far do you realistically think the 49ers can go in the playoffs? Let me know in the comments. And if you've stuck with the channel through all the ups and downs, make sure you're subscribed and help us push past 1,000 subscribers. Like the video if you appreciate the honest breakdowns, and stick around because we'll have full Eagles coverage and injury updates coming your way.